Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. We take all those sources you send us, pull out the key insights, the nuggets of knowledge, and serve them up so you really get it. Today, we're diving into some pretty significant political and economic shifts recently. Surprising turns, power dynamics changing, societal stuff too. Our goal here is simple. Unpack it all, connect the dots for you, and help you see what really matters from the materials you've shared. Okay, so let's unpack this first piece. It's pretty big news in your sources. The nomination of Stephen Miran to the Federal Reserve Board.
Right, and he's being called the architect of President Trump's tariff plans.
Yeah, he's got the credentials, right? Harvard PhD, currently chairs the Council of Economic Advisors. Impressive stuff. But your sources immediately kind of raise an eyebrow about that architect label. His main paper, A User's Guide to Restructuring the Global Trading System. Well, it wasn't peer-reviewed.
No academic journal either. It was posted on a financial services website, Hudson Bay Capital Management.
Exactly. Which the sources point out allowed for a lot of, let's say, political grandstanding. Trump mentioned 56 times.
56. Wow. And they also note it's maybe lacking a bit in academic rigor.
Yeah, they even bring out that old quote, lies, damn lies and statistics.
Ouch. Yeah, what's fascinating there is that contrast, isn't it, between having this coherent plan versus what the reality seems to be according to your sources. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, it sort of suggests this shift, maybe, where economic policy legitimacy comes more from political assertion, from loyalty, than, traditional academic backing.
Interesting. A new playbook, almost.
Could be. Your sources paint the administration's tariff policy as, well, incoherent, haphazard maybe, driven more by personal feelings. One source quotes Fred Kaplan from Slate. He's got a PhD in political science saying Trump's official trade policy is to be as incoherent as possible.
It's blunt.
Yeah, with tax rates set by confusion, avarice, and personal grievance. And just to give you a sense of where we are now, basically every country importing to the U.S. faces at least 10% levies.
At least 10.
67 nations are looking at 15% or more. Some, like Brazil, could potentially hit 50%.
50%.
And there are threats, too. 100% on semiconductors, even 250% on pharmaceuticals.
Wow. Okay, but you mentioned earlier the trade war has only kind of arrived. Your sources say the deadline passed, but the duties won't really bite until early October. What's that about, and how's the market taking it?
Yeah, kind of is the word. The war sort of started, but with a pause. There's this out for goods already on their way. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent mentioned negotiations are still happening.
So a delay tactic.
Your sources suggest that, yeah. A way to postpone the hit without looking like they're backing down. Avoid those Trump always chickens out stories.
The taco narrative.
Exactly. But the market's already reacting. Dow Jones down 1.23%, S&P fell 1.6%, NASDAQ dropped 2.24%. No, and maybe more telling, 10-year Treasury yields were up, meaning investors want more return to lend to the U.S. government. That signals, leeriness about U.S. debt.
Okay, so the administration, Trump on social media, Commerce Secretary Lutnick talking $50 billion a month in revenue. They're saying tariffs are bringing in billions. But the market's nervous. What do your sources say about who actually pays for these tariffs? Because that's often misunderstood, isn't it?
That's the crucial question, right? Who really bears the cost? And, well, basic economics, Econ 101, usually tells us it's mostly consumers, not the foreign companies.
Right.
Your sources bring up history, like the 1820s, 1830s. Southern states hated tariffs back then.
Why was that?
Because they meant higher prices for goods they bought and less money for the stuff they exported. Simple as that. It's framed in your sources as basically a regressive sales tax hitting American consumers.
How much?
Potentially cutting purchasing power by maybe $2,400 per household. That's the estimate cited.
Oof. That's significant.
It is, and it's a point you can bet Democrats will be hammering home, the direct impact on your wallet.
Okay, so beyond that direct cost to you, the listener, our sources talk about several messy problems for the administration. First up, these informal trade deals, the frameworks with the EU and Japan, initially hailed as wins, but now looking fragile.
Yeah, fragile is a good word. They're described as a bit like the emperor's new clothes. They stopped rates going higher for a bit, yeah, but now there's just ongoing squabbling over what was actually agreed. And even more vapory, as one source puts it, are these massive investment promises, hundreds of billions.
Right, Paul Krugman's analysis is cited there.
He points out Trump calling a supposed $600 billion EU commitment a gift he could do anything I want with.
Yeah.
Well, that's just not how it works.
A misunderstanding or misrepresentation?
Either way, foreign governments can't can't just force private companies to invest or create some giant slush fund like that.
So if these shaky deals do collapse, what's next? Just crank up the tariffs even higher.
That seems to be the default threat, but your sources suggest the administration might be running out of trade gunpowder.
How so?
Well, looking bigger picture, countries are already trying to shift their supply chains away from the U.S. Krugman estimates that, okay, 15% tariffs were a real threat, but going much higher, say 35%, it might only cause a small additional drop in trade, like 0.7% of the EU's GDP. Diminishing returns, basically.
I see. Less bang for your buck, tariff-wise.
Exactly. And then there's the legal stuff, lawsuits pending against the tariffs.
On what grounds?
Arguing there's no national emergency to justify them and that it's an illegal delegation of power to the executive. Ironically, your sources suggest losing in court might almost be the best outcome for the administration.
How could losing be good?
Lets them shift the blame, right. But it would still mean economic fallout and potentially having to refund billions in tariffs already collected. Still messy.
Okay. This push for immediate impact, asserting authority, it's not just trade, is it? Your sources show this broader pattern of the executive branch really flexing its muscles, sometimes in pretty surprising ways. Let's shift to that. There were several big actions just this week that caught observers' attention.
Yeah, the breadth of it is quite striking when you lay it all out. For instance, announcing a new census, one that would exclude undocumented immigrants.
Sounds familiar.
Didn't they try that before?
They did, and they lost in court. So doing it again raises huge legal questions. Your sources warn it could spark a bona fide constitutional crisis if different states start using different counts for representation in Congress.
Wow. Okay. And then there's law enforcement. After that attack in D.C. on Edward Corstein, President Trump ordered federal officers to patrol the city and might even deploy the National Guard.
And related, maybe, the White House agreeing to send FBI agents after those Texas lawmakers doing the quorum busting thing?
Wait, FBI agents to arrest state lawmakers for skipping work? That seems like a huge step. It does. And your sources frame it exactly like that, a significant expansion of federal power. It really raises that core question about separation of powers, the limits of executive authority.
And skipping work isn't illegal, right?
Not at all. And sources note state leaders, like Governor Pritzker in Illinois, are already saying, not in my state, asserting their own jurisdiction.
So, stepping back, what's the bigger picture here?
It looks like a trend, according to your sources. Centralizing control, deploying federal resources in new, sometimes unexpected ways, maybe bypassing traditional channels.
All right, let's talk about something that hits closer to home for many listeners. Your wallet. Job numbers. Stephen Moore from the Heritage Foundation, speaking from the Oval Office no less, claimed job creation is actually strong.
Yeah, he said the previous administration overcounted jobs by 1.5 million.
Right, and that Trump's policies put almost $7,000 in the average American family's pocket. So what's the reality check from your sources?
Well, the problem with, let's call them fantasy numbers, is reality tends to bite back. Your sources point out that unemployment claims just hit their highest point since November 2021.
That doesn't sound like strong job creation.
No, it fits more with a picture where population growth is maybe outpacing new jobs, and it's suggested most families will probably notice they aren't actually $7,000 richer.
So a disconnect between the claims and maybe lived experience?
That's what the sources imply. It raises questions about how economic data gets spun versus what people actually feel.
And sticking with the impact on everyday Americans, especially maybe blue-collar workers, let's talk unions. President Trump campaigned as a champion for unions, but this week the VA Veterans Affairs just unilaterally said no more collective bargaining contracts for about 80% of its staff.
80%? That's huge.
Yeah, the reasons given: wasting valuable time and union reps taking up office space.
Wow. So what does this mean for those workers and, critically, for veteran health care? Well, it's potentially massive. Government jobs, right, often pay less salary but offer better job security, better benefits, usually negotiated by unions.
Okay.
So if those benefits disappear, you might see employees leave for the private sector.
Which could impact veteran care.
Potentially, yeah. Quality, availability. Your sources included a really powerful email from a reader, J.A. in Manchester, New Hampshire.
What do they say?
Deep anger, basically. Concern that this isn't just about the VA, but maybe part of dismantling the whole Civil Service Reform Act of 1978.
Dismantling the Civil Service Act.
Yeah, describing it as, quote, an authoritarian fascist program line by line. Strong words.
Very strong. It suggests this VA action is seen as part of something much bigger.
That's the implication your sources are highlighting, yeah. A potential systemic shift.
Okay, and then we saw the president targeting specific companies and CEOs. First JP Morgan, Bank of America.
For refusing deposits.
And then Intel CEO Lip-Bu-Tan called him highly conflicted, demanded he resign.
Based on his ethnicity and Chinese investments. Apparently so. And Intel stock took a hit, right? A 3.1% Trump dump, as your sources called it.
So what's going on with these attacks? They seem very personal. How's it different from, say, Teddy Roosevelt busting trusts?
Yeah, that's a contrast your sources draw. If you zoom out, they suggest a pattern here. Targeting successful businesses, their leaders, may be linked to the president's own feelings about Wall Street. Whereas Teddy Roosevelt, the comparison goes, targeted bad business practices, not specific people quite like this.
So it blurs the line between policy and personal grievance.
That's the question raised. And what effect does that have? Does it create a chill and make companies less independent?
But, okay, not all businesses are getting attacked. Your sources flag one, Extremity Care LLC.
Ah, yeah, selling these bandages made from discarded placentas.
Wait, $10,000 per square inch?
That's the figure cited. And they got over $10 billion from Medicare in 2024.
$10 billion, despite sources saying there's no scientific proof they work better than standard stuff.
Correct. Now, the previous administration, Biden's, had moved to stop Medicare covering this.
Okay.
But the current administration paused that role, and they just extended the pause.
So, why? What on earth is driving that decision, according to the sources?
Well, this definitely raises the C words, cronyism and corruption.
How so?
Your sources state it pretty plainly. Extremity Care LLC donated $5 million to Magi Inc.
Ah, the political action committee supporting the administration.
Exactly. Now, other reasons might be offered, but that financial link is presented as a, let's say, very strong possibility for the decision.
It's a follow the money.
It's a strong suggestion in the material. And placing that in the bigger picture, your sources even pulled up one of those early warning signs of fascism lists and noted that arguably 10 out of 14 signs, including rampant cronyism and corruption, could be checked off just based on the news discussed this week.
That's quite a claim to guarantee. All right, let's shift again. Political maneuvering now and some cultural clashes. Your sources give us a really interesting look at the challenges facing the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, and also some weird shifts in the sports world.
Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard. It's fascinating, isn't it? Trying to solidify her position by reheating that old Russia collusion story from the Obama years.
Her political journey itself is interesting, left-wing populist to right-wing populist?
Very. But this latest move to kind of please the administration doesn't seem to be working out too well, according to your sources.
Why not? How is it backfiring?
Well, on two fronts. On the left, this old clip from 2018 resurfaced, went viral. It's her on Joe Rogan's podcast. And she's acknowledging Russian interference back in 2016. So now she looks, hypocritical trying to dismiss it.
Okay, so that alienates people on one side. What about the right?
Her appearance on Fox News, where she tried to present the 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment, the ICA, as some kind of new proof, it fell flat.
Why did it fall flat?
Because, as your sources point out, the ICA wasn't new. It was public record. It was confirmed by a Republican-led Senate committee.
Which included?
Marco Rubio, who's now Secretary of State, a Trump insider. So, yeah, that attempt apparently did not please Fox viewer, #1, as the source put it.
Got it. Not landing well anywhere, it seems.
Pretty much.
Okay. And finally, women's sports. There's this weird tension your sources describe. Some parts of the administration's base want to protect women's sports from trans athletes.
Right.
But at the same time seem to show real disdain for pro-women's sports, like the WNBA.
Yeah, it's a strange contradiction. And we've seen actual incidents, right?
Yeah.
Stuff being thrown onto WNBA courts.
Green dildos, specifically, thrown by a group linked to crypto bros.
That's what the sources report. And then Donald Trump Jr. posts an AI image of his father throwing one at WNBA players.
Okay. What's the underlying point the sources are making here?
Well, connecting it to the bigger picture, the argument is that these actions, including that AI image, have clear sexist undertones, even if that wasn't the explicit intent. It raises questions about how these cultural, political views bleed into actual behavior in public, and obviously, the impact on the athletes themselves.
But it's not all negative or controversial in the sports world this week, right? Your sources also highlight a positive glass ceiling moment.
That's right. Jen Powell, becoming Major League Baseball's first female umpire.
That's fantastic news. But inevitably, there's been pushback. criticisms calling it a DEI hire?
Yeah, suggesting it's just about diversity quotas, but what do the facts in your sources actually say? Is there any truth to that?
Let's hear it.
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Your sources point out MLB actually got rid of its DEI programs.
They did? When?
At the current administration's request, apparently. And baseball is generally seen as the most conservative major sport run by Rob Manfred, who's a Trump supporter.
So the context doesn't really support the DEI hire narrative then?
Not really.
Yeah.
And Jen Powell herself, clearly qualified. Graduated near the top of umpiring school, worked her way up the minors since 2016, multiple promotions, special assignments. She earned it.
So it raises a question then.
Yeah. Can these fundamental shifts, like more representation, actually be stopped, even when there's resistance, even when programs supporting it are dismantled?
And the implication from your sources?
Maybe not always. Sometimes change just keeps happening.
Wow. What a deep dive that was. From these really intricate, sometimes contradictory economic policies to these bold moves asserting executive power and these evolving cultural fights. A week just packed with significant stuff, all pulled from the details in your sources.
Yeah, and if you connect it all, stepping back, it really shows how fast policy decisions can ripple out, doesn't it? Through the economy, through society, creates effects you intend and maybe effects you really didn't.
Right.
And it really underlines how important critical thinking is, especially when you're given, say, economic numbers or claims about how well a policy is working and how sometimes individual actions really reflect these much bigger societal trends.
So what does all this mean for you listening? Maybe consider how these things that seem separate, a tariff policy, a change to the census, even a new umpire, how they might actually connect to bigger themes. Power, information, the direction society is heading. This dive into your sources suggests that whether it's economics or culture, there are these constant forces pushing and pulling, painting a picture of a country, maybe trying to figure out its way through some pretty unprecedented challenges. So here's something for you to mull over this week. Thinking about all those messy problems your sources laid out, the trade challenges, the fragile deals, the questions around domestic policy, what do you think would be the single hardest corner for this administration to get itself out of right now? And why that one in particular?